He let me walk away. Then he followed me. This is part 2 of the Billionaire's Obsession. He paid my rent for 2 years. Then I found him in my room at night. For 2 years, Ethan Monroe secretly paid my rent. He protected me. He spoiled me. He made me believe I was safe. I worked for him. I trusted him. And somewhere along the way, I fell in love with him. Then I found him standing in my bedroom in the middle of the night. And I discovered the truth. 12 years ago, my father's federal report destroyed his family. Everything Ethan did for me, every gift, every touch, every act of kindness was part of a revenge he had planned for years. I told him to leave. He did. I drove back to Savannah believing it was finally over. But it wasn't. Because on that lonely highway, Ethan Monroe made a decision that changed both of our lives forever. He stopped. And what happened next shattered everything I thought I knew. Welcome back, beautiful family. This is Danito's Stories, where the quietest moments break the hardest. Ethan Monroe, the man who paid 2 years of my rent without being asked, who drove me home in the rain, who kissed me at a rooftop gala like I was the only woman in a city of 6 million. He stopped at my door. I had told him to leave. I'd put my hand flat on his chest and pushed, and he stopped. He didn't argue. He didn't manipulate. He didn't do any of the things a man of his power and patience could have done. He just straightened his jacket, looked at me one final time with something I still don't have a word for, and walked out of my apartment. The door clicked shut behind him, and I stood in the middle of my living room and fell apart. Not the crying kind of falling apart, the quiet kind. The kind where you sit down slowly on the floor because your legs stop working, and you press your back against the couch, and you stare at nothing, and everything you have been trying to outrun for weeks finally catches you. Because here is what nobody tells you about finding out you were used. Nobody tells you that it doesn't erase the feelings. I wish it did. I wish the moment my father told me the truth about Ethan's past, everything inside me had just gone cold and clean. But that's not how hearts work. That's not how it felt at all. What it felt like was this: someone handing you a photograph of the most beautiful thing you've ever seen, and then telling you it's on fire. The photograph is still beautiful. The fire is still real. And you're standing there holding both truths at once with your hands burning. I packed a bag that same night, 2 changes of clothes, my laptop. My father's voice is still in my ear. By 6 o'clock the following morning, I was on a 75 South, driving back to Savannah. I didn't tell my father I was coming. He was on the porch when I pulled up, like he had been expecting me, the way he always seemed to expect the things I didn't announce. He had his coffee and his stillness, watched me walk up the path with eyes that already knew what I had in mind. I sat down next to him without saying a word. He handed me the other mug he had sitting on the railing. It was already warm. We sat for a long time, watching the morning come in over the old oak trees at the edge of the yard, the kind of silence that only exists between 2 people who love each other enough not to fill it unnecessarily. Finally, he said, "He left?" "Yes, sir." He nodded slowly. "Good." I looked into my mug. "Daddy, I need to ask you something, and I need you to answer me honestly, the way you always have." "Go ahead." "Was any part of what he did to me, anything about it that wasn't about revenge?" My father was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Baby, I don't know that man's heart." "I know. I'm asking what you think." He exhaled slowly, set his mug down. "The way he looked at you at that gala. Dana's daughter was there, and she told me her mother mentioned it. That's not a look a man practices for a plan." He paused. "But what he did was still wrong." "I know it was wrong." I closed my eyes. I keep thinking about the way he was with me. The texts at night to make sure I got home safe. The dinner. The way he never once asked me for anything. My voice cracked slightly on the last word. I steadied it. "Daddy, someone who is only running a plan doesn't act like that." My father picked up his mug again. "No," he said quietly. "They don't." We left it there. But something shifted between us in that moment. a small door opening in a wall my father had been standing against for 12 years. I spent 2 weeks in Savannah. I helped my mother at the diner in the mornings, the way I used to when I was a teenager. I carried plates and refilled coffee and let the normalcy of it hold me together while everything inside me was still sorting itself out. At night, I lay in my old bedroom and stared at the ceiling and thought about Ethan, the billionaire, my boss. Not because I wanted to, because I couldn't stop. I thought about his face in the dark of my apartment, not the coldness, not the controlled armor, but the flicker underneath it. That thing in his eyes that looked like regret. I thought about the night he drove me home and sat in the parking lot until I was safely inside. I thought about the text messages, not the ones I'd looked at with suspicion, but the ones I had read first, before I was looking for the angle. The ones that just said, "Get some rest, and you were good in that meeting today," and once at midnight on a Thursday. Just my name. Just Layla. Nothing after it. Had I written back? And he had written nothing. Good night. I had smiled at my phone for 10 minutes over a man who sent me a text that said nothing, just to say nothing. That was the man I couldn't get out of my head, not the billionaire with the dark history. The man who texted my name at midnight because he was thinking about me and had nowhere to put it. On the 9th day, my phone lit up, an Atlanta number, one I had not blocked because some foolish, stubborn feeling part of me had not been able to bring myself to. I let it ring. It rang 4 times, then stopped. 20 seconds later, a text. "I know you're in Savannah. I'm not asking you to come back. I just want you to know I've been trying to figure out how to say this the right way, and I can't find the right way. So I'll just say it plainly. I'm sorry. Not for the reason you think. I'm sorry, because somewhere between the beginning and the end, it stopped being about your father, and I didn't stop. I should have stopped. Read it 3 times. Then I put the phone face down on the bed. Then I picked it up and read it again. 2,000 miles away, or what felt like it, though Atlanta was only 4 hours north, Ethan Monroe was sitting in his penthouse at 1:47 in the morning and doing something his board of directors would not have recognized. He was doing nothing. No calls, no reports, no strategy. He was sitting in the chair by the floor-to-ceiling window with a glass of whiskey he had not touched, watching the Atlanta skyline as it owed him something, and thinking about a woman in a burgundy dress who had pushed him out of her apartment with her hand flat on his chest and her chin up, and her eyes full of something he was only now starting to understand was courage. His assistant, Marcus, had noticed it first. "You rescheduled the Meridian expansion meeting twice," he said one afternoon, standing in the doorway of Ethan's office with the careful expression of a man who knew better than to say too much. "I'll reschedule it again if I need to," Ethan said without looking up. "The Hargrove contract, send it to legal. You always review the Hargrove contracts yourself." "Marcus?" Ethan looked up then, just once. "Close the door on your way out." Marcus left, but not before glancing, just briefly, at the empty desk on the other side of the glass partition. Layla's desk, still exactly as she had left it, her stapler on the right, her notepad squared up precisely next to her keyboard, a small, succulent plant she had brought in 4 months ago still sitting in the corner. Ethan had told the facilities team not to touch it. He called her that night. He did not plan to. He picked up his phone to check an email, and before he had consciously decided anything, his thumb found her name. It rang 4 times. She didn't answer. He sat in silence for a long moment after the call dropped. Then he set the phone down and looked at the city below and felt something he was not accustomed to feeling. Just small, quiet, and accountable in a way that no amount of money had ever been able to buy him out of. He typed the message. He sent it before he could think himself out of it. Then he put the phone down and finally drank the whiskey. I didn't write back that night. I sat with the message for 2 more days. I carried it around like a stone in my pocket, heavy but somehow grounding. I took it out and looked at it when I was folding laundry, when I was sitting at the diner counter during the slow afternoon hour, when I was lying in the dark, trying to sleep and failing. On the 11th day, I went and sat with my father on the porch again. The evening was warm, and the fireflies were starting in the yard, the way they always did in June in Savannah, low and unhurried, like little heartbeats in the dark. "Daddy," I said, "I think I want to go back." He didn't answer right away. "Not to go back to him," I said carefully. "I don't know what I want with him yet, but I need to go back and stand in front of him and know what's real. I can't figure that out from here." My father was quiet for a long time. "I've spent 12 years being angry at Ethan Monroe," he finally said. "And there are things about that case I never told you. Things I didn't think mattered anymore." I looked at him. "Daddy, not tonight." He put his hand over mine. "But when you go, if you go, I want to come with you." I stared at him. "There are things that man deserves to hear from me directly," he said. His voice was steady, but underneath it, there was something I had never quite heard there before. Something that sounded impossibly like unfinished business. And things I need to hear from him. I didn't ask any more questions that night. I just sat beside my father in the warm Georgia dark and listened to the fireflies and let the decision settle in my chest like something finally coming to rest. 3 days later, I drove back to Atlanta. I didn't call him first. I told myself it was because I didn't want to give him time to prepare. But the truth was simpler and more embarrassing than that. I was afraid that if he said the wrong thing on the phone, I'd lose my nerve. I drove the 4 hours with the windows down and the radio off. Just road and sky and the particular kind of quiet that exists between one version of yourself and the next. When I pulled into the underground garage of his building, I sat in my car for a long time. Then I walked to the lobby. The front desk attendant looked up as I approached. I had been here once before, months ago, for a work function on the 40th floor. I had never been to Ethan's personal floor. I opened my mouth to say my name, to ask if he was in, to navigate the professional gatekeeping of a building like this. The attendant smiled before I finished. "Ms. Carter," he said, "Mr. Monroe has you on the permanent access list, 44th floor. He's in." I closed my mouth. Permanent access list? In all the weeks I had been gone, in all the silence and the space between us, he had never taken my name off the list. I stood there for one moment too long, and I felt something crack open in the middle of my chest. Not painfully, just openly. The way a window cracks open on the first warm morning of spring. And you didn't realize until that second how stale the air inside had gotten. I took the elevator to the 44th floor. He answered the door in a white shirt, untucked and dark trousers. No jacket, no armor. He looked like a man who had been working late and sleeping badly. And when he saw me standing in the hallway, something moved across his face that he didn't have time to manage. For the first time since I had known him, Ethan Monroe's expression was completely unguarded, just open, startled, real. Layla, my name in his mouth, quiet and low, like something he had been saving. "I'm not back," I said immediately. I'm back in Atlanta. I haven't decided anything. I just need to talk to you." "Okay." He stepped back from the door. "Come in." He didn't reach for me. He didn't touch me. He gave me the full width of the doorway and stepped back until there was space between us, and I noticed it. And I was grateful for it in a way that told me something important about how carefully he was treading now. The penthouse was different from how I'd imagined it, warmer. There were books everywhere, actual books, not decorative ones with broken spines and bent pages. There was a half-full coffee cup on the desk near the window. There was a plant on the kitchen counter, the same kind as the small succulent I had on my work desk. I stopped when I saw it. "You got one," I said. He followed my gaze. Then, quietly, without any performance, he said, "Yours was the only living thing in that office after you left. I wanted to see if I could keep something alive." The room was very still. I sat down on the edge of the couch. He sat in the chair across from me. Not next to me. Across. The deliberateness of it was not lost on me. "Tell me when it stopped," I said. "You told me in the text that it stopped being about my father. I need you to tell me when. Exactly when. Because I've been trying to figure out what was real, and I can't do it from the outside." He looked at me for a long moment. Then he leaned forward, elbows on his knees, hands clasped, and spoke in that direct, unadorned way that had always undone me. "The night of the gala," he said. "Not the kiss, before the kiss. We were standing at the window, and you were talking about Savannah, about your mother's diner and the flower on her hands, and the way you said it." He paused. "You said she never let her smile fall. And you looked at me like you were telling me something important, like you trusted me with something small and real." His jaw tightened slightly, and I felt sick. A pause. "Because you were trusting me," he said, "and I had spent 8 months arranging to be in a position where your trust would cost you something." His eyes didn't leave mine. That was the moment. I sat with that. "But you kissed me anyway," I said. "Yes." His voice dropped. "Because I was also by that point completely gone on you, and I was not yet brave enough to choose the right thing over the real thing." I stood up then. Not to leave, just because the distance between us felt suddenly intolerable, and I needed to move, and I went to the window and looked out at Atlanta below. He didn't follow me. He stayed in the chair and let me have the space. That was the thing about the new Ethan, the careful Ethan. He was learning the language of restraint, not the cold kind he'd always spoken, but the warm kind, the kind that says, "I see what you need, and I'm choosing that over what I want." "I want to ask you something else," I said, still looking at the city. "Okay. If I had never found out about my father, if I had never put it together, what was the plan?" I turned from the window. "What were you going to do with me?" The silence stretched. "I don't know," he said finally. And I believed him, because it was the first answer that sounded completely unresolved, like he had been living inside that question too. Somewhere along the way, the plan stopped having an end. I kept rearranging the timeline, telling myself I'd find a way to fix it later. He looked down at his hands, which is what people do when they know they're doing something wrong and they're not ready to stop. "That's honest," I said. "I'm trying to be." I crossed the room slowly and sat back down on the couch, closer this time. And he noticed, I saw him notice, but he didn't move. "My father's coming," I said, his chin lifted slightly. "He wants to talk to you, directly. And I think you need to let him." Something passed through his eyes, not fear exactly, but the particular tension of a man who has been running from a confrontation for 12 years and can feel it finally arriving. He nodded once. "When?" "This weekend. He'll drive up Saturday morning." Another nod. "I'll be here." If you're feeling this story, like and share it so others can find it. Comment where you're watching from now. Back to the story. And then, because we were two people who had been dancing around the wreckage of everything between us, and because the room was quiet and the city was lit up below, and I was tired of distance, I said, "Was the dinner real? The Italian place, was that real?" He looked at me steadily. "Every minute of it. The drive home, the flat tire." "I did not arrange a flat tire," he said, and there was a faint, exhausted, almost smile on his face. "Some things are just coincidences, Layla." I laughed. It came out before I could stop it, this surprised, unguarded thing that broke the last of the tension in the room. He smiled then, fully, the way I had seen him smile exactly twice before, both times when he thought I wasn't watching. I looked at him and thought, "There you are. That's the real one." I didn't say it, but I thought it. And something in the way he was looking at me said he knew. I didn't go back to my apartment that night. I went to Maya's. I needed distance and a cup of tea and a friend who would tell me exactly what she thought, which Maya has never once failed to deliver. "So let me understand," Maya said, sitting cross-legged on her couch with a mug in both hands. "You went to his penthouse. He had a matching succulent. He sat across the room from you the whole time without making a move. And he said he was completely gone on you." "Yes. And your father is coming to confront him on Saturday." "Yes?" Maya looked at me. "Layla, this is either the most romantic thing I have ever heard or a very literary disaster." "I know. Do you still love him?" I looked at my tea. I looked at the steam rising from it. I thought about a man sitting alone in a chair at 2 in the morning, not drinking his whiskey, and a permanent access list, and a succulent on a kitchen counter. "I never stopped," I said quietly. "That's the problem. I never stopped for even one day." Maya put her mug down and pulled me into a hug. "Then Saturday better go well," she said against my hair. He met us at the door at 10 in the morning. He was in a suit, the dark kind he wore when things mattered, but the jacket was open, and his hands were at his sides, not in his pockets, which I had learned was his version of being undefended. My father walked in ahead of me. He was in his church clothes, which meant he had decided something before he arrived. The two men looked at each other in the middle of Ethan's living room. 12 years of damage between them. 12 years of a ruined case, a buried report, a career detoured, a company built from anger and loss. 12 years of two men who had never been in the same room. My father spoke first. "Mr. Monroe." "Mr. Carter." Ethan's voice was steady but quieter than usual. "Thank you for coming." "I came for my daughter," my father said plainly. "But there are things I've needed to say to you for a long time." Ethan nodded. "I know. Sit down, please." We sat, and for the next 2 hours things were said in that room that I had not known, could not have known, had not been old enough or close enough to know. My father told Ethan directly that the report had been his job, and he would file it again. That the operations connected to those freight contracts had cost real people real safety. And he had not acted out of malice, but out of obligation. That he had never celebrated what the report cost Ethan. That he had, in fact, tried twice through back channels to ensure Ethan was separated from the worst of the connected operations before the case formally closed. Ethan listened without interrupting, without defending. He just listened. And then he said something I did not expect. "I know," he said quietly. "I found out 2 years ago, through my own research. I know you tried to protect my name from the worst of it." He looked at my father steadily. I had already spent 8 years being angry at the wrong version of events. By the time I understood what actually happened, I had already hired your daughter. The room went very still. "And I couldn't stop," Ethan said. His voice was low and without any shield at all. "I want you to understand, I could not stop. And I know that's not an excuse. It's just the truth of what happened. I met your daughter, and somewhere very quickly she became the reason I came in every morning. Not the plan, her." My father looked at him for a long time. Then he looked at me. Then back at Ethan. "You hurt her," he said. "Yes, sir, I did." "Are you going to do it again?" The question hung in the air, plain and impossible, and the most important one in the room. Ethan turned and looked at me. Not at my father. At me. "Not if she gives me the chance to spend the rest of my time making sure she doesn't regret staying," he said. I felt my breath leave. My father was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached across the coffee table and set his hand down, palm up. Ethan looked at it. Then he reached out and took it. They shook hands. Two men who had spent 12 years as each other's wound, choosing, slowly, imperfectly, in a living room in Atlanta on a Saturday morning, to be something else instead. I pressed my fingers to my mouth. I did not cry, but it was very close. My father left at 1 o'clock. He had a long drive, and he needed to get back before dark. He hugged me at the door for longer than usual, and when he let go, he looked at me and said, "Trust slowly, Layla, but don't stop trusting." Then he looked past me at Ethan, standing a few feet back. "Take care of my daughter," he said, not a request. "Yes, sir," Ethan said, "I intend to." My father nodded once. Then he walked to his car, and I watched him go, and I felt something in my chest rearrange itself into something that felt, finally, after months of fracture and rearrangement, like it was in the right place. I closed the front door. I turned around. Ethan was still standing in the middle of the room, watching me with those steady, dark eyes that had first noticed me 18 months ago across a conference floor. Watching me the way he always had, like I was the problem he had already solved and was still, somehow, fascinated by. I walked toward him slowly. He didn't move. He let me come. When I stopped in front of him, close enough that I could see the slight unsteadiness in his breathing, this controlled, armored, unreadable man, unsteady, I reached up and put my hand against his jaw, just held it there. He closed his eyes, just for a second, like the touch cost him something, and he was grateful for the debt. "I need you to know something," I said softly. "Okay. I'm not forgiving you because you shook my father's hand. I'm not forgiving you because you kept a plant or left my name on an access list." I searched his face. "I'm forgiving you because I watched you choose accountability over pride every single time it mattered today. And because I have never, in all my life, felt more known by anyone than I feel when you look at me." He opened his eyes. "And I need you to know," I continued, "that if you ever use me or him or anyone I love for leverage again—" "I won't," he said. His hand came up and covered mine where it rested on his jaw. "Layla, I won't." And then he kissed me. Not like the gala that had been a decision made in a rooftop crowd. Not like my apartment doorway that had been a farewell dressed as a beginning. This was different. This was slow. This was careful and deliberate and full of all the things two people say when they have stopped using words as armor and started using them as an offering. His hands came up to my face, both of them, gentle, like something he was holding rather than taking. And I stepped into him, and felt the last wall between us go quiet. When we finally broke apart, I pressed my forehead against his. We stood there for a moment, just breathing. "What happens now?" I said. He pulled back just enough to look at me. "Now?" He tucked a strand of hair back from my face with the careful attention of a man who intends to be doing this for a very long time. "Now we do it right. All of it. From the beginning." I smiled. "You know that's going to be harder than whatever you were doing before." "I know." He was almost smiling too. "I have a feeling you're going to make sure of that." I laughed softly, and he kissed me again, brief this time, just once, like a period at the end of a sentence that was finally the right sentence. Outside, Atlanta moved on, loud and fast and unaware. But in that room, in that quiet, something had been repaired that I hadn't believed could be repaired. Not perfectly. Scar tissue never looks like original skin, but it holds. Sometimes it holds better. I thought about my mother at the diner counter in Savannah, flour on her hands and a tired smile she never let fall. I thought about my father, driving south on R-Light 75, his church clothes and his handshake, and the 12-year wait he was finally, slowly, setting down. I thought about Ethan, sitting alone at 2 a.m. with an untouched glass of whiskey, texting my name into the dark and waiting. And I thought about what I had told Maya. I never stopped. Not for even one day. Some things survive everything you throw at them, not because they're invincible, because they're true. I was still learning the shape of this man. I would probably keep learning it for years, in the way you only learn the shape of something when you've also held it in the dark and known what it feels like when it cracks. But I was staying, and so was he. 3 weeks later. I was back at my desk at Monroe Freight. Different this time. Not an assistant, not an administrative coordinator. Ethan had created a new position in the logistics compliance division, which was either poetic or ironic depending on how you looked at it. And I had taken it, because I was good at the work and I was not going to let anyone, including the man I was in love with, make professional decisions for me. The office was the same. The glass walls, the conference rooms, the particular hum of a building that runs on numbers and precision. But some things were different. On my desk, next to the stapler and the squared-up notepad, there was a second succulent. Small. New. With a small card tucked into the soil. I pulled the card out. It said, "From the beginning." I was still smiling at it when my phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "My name is Claire Hargrove. I know what Ethan Monroe did to your father 12 years ago, and I know who really set it up. We need to talk." I read it once, twice. My hand tightened around the phone, and just like that, the ground shifted again. Me again. I thought the hue has been buried. What would you rate this story? Drop 0 to 10 in the comments right now. Hit the subscribe button, like, and share for more emotional journeys every day. And if it truly touched your heart, consider leaving a super thanks. Your support helps us create more stories like this. Every contribution, big or small, means a lot. Ready for the next story? It's even more dramatic than this. Click now. Thank you for being part of this journey.